This is the Yamaha CK61. It's a 61 note stage keyboard and it has 128 notes of polyphony. At the time of shooting this video, in Australia, its street price was just underneath 1,400 Australian dollars. It doesn't sample, nor does it play back custom samples. It won't allow you to create synthesized sounds from scratch like you can on a proper synth. And it's not a workstation. While a workstation will commonly allow you to split, layer, or otherwise access up to 16 different multi-timbres at the same time, the CK only has access to just 3. So can this entry-level, semi-pro keyboard possibly be any good? Yeah, it can. For a start, it's based on the AWM engine used in more expensive Yamaha models, like the CP and Montage, so most of the sounds are very good. To my ear, the acoustic pianos are materially better than the competitors in the same price range. Yamaha does better electric pianos than most, and sure enough, those in the CK sound great. Acoustic instruments, such as guitars, are pretty good. And the strings are very Yamaha-like, in that they're great for background strings, but not so great for those upfront, semi-lead strings like you might get in 70s disco. Synth sounds are okay, but I don't think they set the world on fire, a limitation of the sample-based approach, but many are usable in a band context. By the way, of the 363 onboard sounds, it has not one jump sound, but 2. This second one being the one that's on the Motif and the Mo-XF. I prefer the former. And then there's the organ engine. It's basically lifted from the Reface YC, which means it's based on Yamaha's sample-based organ flutes. As I understand it, this means that each one of these drawbars is essentially a volume knob for a sample of an organ flute that has been allocated to that particular drawbar. Speaking of which, it has samples of Hammond, Vox, Farfisa, Acetone, which is an old Roland brand, and Yamaha organ flutes. But it is not the same virtual circuit modelling organ technology used in the more expensive Yamaha YC range. So it seems like the right time to talk about effects, and there are 3 effect sections: organ-specific, insert, and global. The organ section of the CK has selectable vibrato or chorus, which apply to just the organ. But selecting the rotary effect does use up one of the shared insert effects. While we're here, rotary A is the plain rotary speaker effect, and rotary B is a rotary speaker connected to a transistor preamplifier with distortion. Each of the insert effects is shared amongst each of the 3 multi-timbral parts of the CK, but they can be switched on or off for each part. But I think the best way to explain this is to put together some patches. And this time I'm going to do a 3-way split. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to have strings. So why don't we put that in place? I'll go to strings, and these will be synthy strings. So now that I've got that category selected, I can just scroll through the options of my string category. Yep, that's going to do nicely. It sounds terrible because it's too low, right? But I'm going to bring it up an octave. There we go. Perfect. So that's one. Now let's introduce a split. Now I'm going to click on this split button, and you can see that the CK gives me some algorithms for the type of split that I want. But the one that I want is one part across each of the 3 sections of the keyboard. If I turn on part B, so you can see I have 2 parts, and there is in fact a split. Now I've only put 2 parts in, which means that our low side is full of part A and our upper side is full of part B. So let's check that out. Right, yep, okay, so we know where our split point is. Our split point is about here. Now that split point is actually a little low for me. I want that to be on the C, right? So I want it to split here. That's easily done. I can hold down the split point and then press a key, and you can see that has changed to be C3. Ace. So you can see that's been changed. Now in the middle section, I want to use a certain sort of synthy sound. Maybe it's in the pad section. Aha, that's the one I'm after, the vapor sound. So again, we'll check that split. Okay, that's looking good. Now let's introduce the third sound of the split by turning it on. And again, you can see that the display has changed, and it's showing us now that we have 3 parts, one in the bottom part of the keyboard, one in the middle part of the keyboard, and one in the upper part of the keyboard. And that piano sound, actually, we're going to keep. Let's check what the splits are. Okay, I think we need to make it a little bit lower. Let's bring it down to the C. And again, we do that by clicking on the split point button, pressing the key, and now our splits should be where we want them. Maybe not so much there, we might have lost one there. So let's put him back. Split point, there we go. Okay, now we're good to go. All right, so we have our sounds in place. Right. This one's not quite in the right octave, so I'm going to hold down part B and I'm going to put it up 1 octave. You can really hear that cycling on the sample. It's not great, but we'll cop it. And this piano is too high for my liking, so I'm going to hold down C and transpose down. Perfect. Let's put some effects on this. What I want to have is chorus on the first 2 parts and a delay on the last part only, the third part on the right-hand side. So let's do that. I've got part A selected. I might as well do both. I can hold down both parts A and B like so. They turn white. I'll then put an effect on that. I like that chorus a lot, so that's fantastic. And on part C, I'm going to put effect 2. And I want a delay. I'm going to go with an analog delay. It's a bit fast, so let's make it a bit slower. Right. Now, on top of that, we do have a global delay, which I'm not going to use because I don't want it to apply to the first 2 sounds that I put in. And we have global reverb, yeah, which has already been applied. All right, let's have a play. keybed is okay. It's not flagship. It's not waterfall. It's not semi-weighted. Yamaha calls this their FSB keyboard, and it's a synth action, and while it lacks a bit in travel length, and the keys are a little narrower than standard, as is the Yamaha way, I didn't find it diminished my enjoyment of the board. Certainly, it doesn't have the dreaded stiff at the hinge action I find so challenging on, say, the Roland Phantom O and Korg Chrome boards. There is a weighted Action 88 key version, but I've not had my hands on it, so I can't speak to it. There is no 73 or 76 key version at this time. That's a bummer. The CK is super light at 5.5 kilograms, and in its soft case is a little shorter than a guitar in its case, though its diminutive size can look a little bit odd when there is more stand than keyboard. The built-in speakers are a bonus. They are certainly not hi-fi. I'd give them only about a 5 out of 10 for sound quality, but they are a useful inclusion. The physical switch to turn them off and on is handy, and by default they turn off when the headphones are plugged in, but it looks like there's a setting to override that. It can run on batteries, and leaving it on for 4 hours, playing it for about 2.5 hours of those 4 hours, exhausted the batteries in my test. But this was with the internal speakers switched off, and running the speakers on battery would drastically reduce these times. Running internal Bluetooth, which can be used to play audio from a smart device, would also reduce battery runtime. Regarding inputs and outputs, the basics are there, including USB for memory stick and another USB to connect directly to a computer. I like that the 2 foot pedal inputs can be selectable as both switches, or both expression pedals, or a switch and an expression pedal, but I would have liked to have seen 1 more foot switch for a total of 3. Also, the Midi out is not switchable to a Midi through, so in some setups, you're going to need a Midi split merger box like this one. I hate that. Speaking of the negatives, the CK doesn't have a drum kit on board. Sometimes I'll play percussion in a band context, like a cowbell or a hand clap, and as it stands, that is not an option with the CK. In closing, if you're expecting to replace a Nord at a cut price, then you're kidding yourself. And it's not a direct competitor to Yamaha's own YC range. The price gap precludes that. If you want the sound, functionality, and build quality of those boards, you'll need to spend some more money. But as a gateway into the world of stage keyboards, or as a second board, or as a full-size reface YC, I find the Yamaha CK61 to be a compelling value proposition, but your mileage may vary. What do you think? Let me know. My name's Paul, and I hope you found this review useful.